We're now starting with the crossbar removal and installation. You'll start first using a Phillips screwdriver, removing the 3 screws on the front pedal tube shroud. You will now continue by removing the number 35 bolt along with the number 30 washer and number 17 nylon nut. And you can use an adjustable wrench or the original tools that were provided with the unit. Using a flat screwdriver, remove the crank cover number 44. And you will now use a 13mm socket to remove the bolt number 44. And you can turn that counterclockwise. You can now slide the pedal tube from the pedal connection joint. Using the flat screwdriver, carefully remove the silver cap in the center of the circular wheel by placing the flat screwdriver behind the cap and just pushing it off. You can just go ahead and set that cap aside. You'll now use your 2.5-inch long or 14mm socket. If a 14mm is not available, you can also use a 9/16 socket. You can insert the socket and turn counterclockwise, and this will remove the flying nut from the center. Now you'll use your crank puller. With the crank puller, just make sure that you back the dark portion of the crank puller. And now you'll insert the crank puller into the center, and you will turn the inner part of the crank puller, turn that clockwise by hand. You can now use an adjustable wrench and continue turning the inner portion of the crank puller until it tightens. Turn the dark black extractor bolt clockwise and stop turning it as soon as the wheel starts to loosen up. Do not wait for the wheel to come completely off, otherwise it'll be difficult to remove the crank puller after. can just carefully remove the circular wheel. When you're ready to replace the new circular wheel or the new crossbar, take a look at the center of the wheel and you'll see that there's a specific cut. It should be a square shape, which should match the square shape cut on the center of the axle. And the axle will be coming out from the center of the main. When you're ready to place the new circular wheel onto the unit, make sure that all four sides of the square shape in the center match. And you also want to make sure that your pedals are in opposite directions of each other, meaning that if your crank or the pedal connection joint is towards the bottom section, your pedal on the opposite side should be in the upper section. So one should be in the lower section, one in the upper. And you can just go ahead and press your wheel in. You will now use the 2.5 inch long 14 millimeter socket or a 9/16 socket. You'll place it in the center and carefully with the hammer hit the socket. And you can move the wheel just to make sure that it's not loose anymore. You can now take your flang nut and replace it back onto the center of the wheel. Hand thread it by hand, turning it clockwise. And then you can go ahead and take your 2.5 inch long 14 millimeter or 9/16 socket wrench and fasten the flang nut, turning it clockwise. Now take your cap, the center cap that you placed aside before, and just go ahead and lightly place it in, match the clips to the correct location, and just push in. You can now slide the pedal tube onto the pedal connection joint. You'll place your washer number 45 and the special washer number 10 onto the bolt, and you can just hand tighten the bolt first. Don't tighten it completely, otherwise you will have a problem with the following step. We'll now move to the front section of the pedal tube, and you will connect the coupler bar with the pedal tube by sliding the bolt number 35 through the joint. You'll then place your washer on the other side, number 30, and manually thread the nut on. You can now use 2 wrenches, and the best thing to do is to hold one side steady and turn the opposite side, and this will fasten the part. And since we only hand tightened the bolt on the back portion, we can now go back and using your 13 millimeter socket wrench, you can go ahead and now fasten the bolt. And you can place the plastic cap, the little cover, and just push in. We'll now go back to the front section again, and we'll attach the front pedal tube shrouds. And there's 3 screws that are used that are inside, so you can just place them into the cover and then slide the covers on. And align the holes. And use a Phillips screwdriver to fasten each screw. And you're all done.